I always thought my husband Darius and I had a really strong thing going. The kind of relationship that could handle pretty much anything: time, change, whatever life threw at us. Trust came easy. It was just there, like breathing. And respect. That wasn't even something we ever had to talk about. It just existed. We didn't need to make promises every day or keep proving ourselves. Our lives kind of moved in sync. Same routines, big decisions, even those quiet weekends where we didn't have to say much at all. There were no jealous moments, no suspicious looks. Honestly, people used to tell us how lucky we were. I thought I knew him completely. Every little habit, every pause, every breath. But I guess I learned later that being steady doesn't always mean being truthful. That morning, nothing special. He got up early, took a shower, made his black coffee like always, kissed me on the way out, said he had some office thing. He wore that charcoal suit he liked, the one he usually saved for meetings. Drove off in the company car, same as every weekday. The door closed behind him, normal sound. No weird tone, no long look, nothing, just another regular morning. And I had no clue what I was about to find that day. So later, I was just cleaning up around the house, and I walked into the garage. Our SUV was sitting there, covered in dust, like it hadn't moved in ages. The windshield was cloudy, tires looked flat. It almost felt like time had stopped inside that car. I thought, maybe I'll clean it up. Just a nice surprise for him. Something thoughtful. I got the cleaning stuff out, opened the doors, started wiping things down, vacuuming, checking little corners. It actually felt kind of nice. Quiet, simple work. I even smiled, thinking about how happy he'd be to see it all cleaned up again. But then, I opened the glove compartment. Just casually. Wasn't even thinking much. There were old papers, some gum that looked ancient. And then I saw it. A box of condoms. Unopened. A brand we never used. For a second, I just froze. My hand stopped midair. I couldn't even breathe properly. It was like my chest tightened all at once. The world went quiet. You know that kind of silence that almost hurts? I just stared at it, holding that box, not even sure what I was feeling. It was like touching something that wasn't supposed to be there, something that didn't belong in my life. We hadn't used protection in years, not since we started trying for another baby, the one that never happened. So, why would he have those? Why hide them here? And that thought, it just broke something inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, just this quiet, sinking kind of pain. I shut the glove box fast, like maybe if I closed it hard enough, it would undo what I saw. But it didn't, of course. The sound echoed in the garage. I stepped back from the car, shaking. My legs felt weak, my stomach twisted, and for a while my mind just went blank, no words, no questions. Just this dull, steady roar in my chest. I pressed my back against the garage wall, unable to make sense of how something so small could hurt so much. I couldn't cry. It was too raw, too early to even name it. For hours, I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable, innocent explanation. Maybe they were old, forgotten, bought by mistake. Some clumsy, meaningless precaution. I clung to anything that didn't include betrayal, because the other possibility was unbearable. I forced myself to keep cleaning, even though my hands trembled and my eyes blurred with unshed tears. Lying to myself felt easier than facing what was likely true. Still, a voice inside me kept screaming that I could no longer ignore the facts. This box was a door to a betrayal that had likely been going on a while. The way it was stored, the neat hiding place, his silence, everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle I'd refused to solve. This wasn't leftovers from the past or an innocent mistake. This was recent, deliberate, and hidden. I could no longer pretend otherwise. I went back inside without a word, moving like a ghost, face pale, gaze empty. I sat on the sofa in the same corner where we'd cuddled through countless movies and let the tears fall. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just cried quietly, as if the pain itself was shy. Hours slipped by while I sat there, arms crossed around myself, holding the ache close. No one saw how I shattered on the inside. From that day on, something in the way I looked at him changed. His eyes seemed different, his smile hiding something murky. I started watching him from afar, noting every excuse, every quick look at his phone, every small gesture I'd once ignored. He stopped being my partner and became a stranger wearing familiar clothes. And I, who had always been open with him, learned to keep silent because something in me had woken up. I walked to the little spice shop near our street and bought a packet of dried habanero chilies, the kind that sting if you touch them. I wasn't sure what I planned to do, but I needed to act. I couldn't keep watching myself fall apart. Back home, I crushed the chilies until they were powder, feeling my eyes burn like it was meant to be punishment. I did it without tears, without shaking, with a strange calm, like someone preparing something precise. It was a cold choice, but it was mine. Wearing latex gloves I'd found under the sink, I opened the condom box with the same careful attention someone uses to defuse a bomb. One by one, I filled them with the chili powder, making sure each was well coated. I sealed them carefully, left no fingerprints, and altered nothing else that might raise suspicion. It was a silent, surgical kind of revenge. No shouting, no confrontation. I didn't want justice so much as for it to hurt. I put the box back in the glove compartment exactly where I'd found it. I closed it softly and took a long breath, knowing there was no turning back. I made sure not to leave any traces, not to move anything else that could disturb the scene. This wasn't a threat. It was a quiet promise. If he betrayed me, he would not do it without consequence. That night, I met him with a calm, almost gentle smile, as if nothing had changed, as if I were still the woman who waited for him every day. I cooked his favorite meal, lit a couple of candles, and listened to his office stories while nodding along. Inside, anger and sorrow crossed like knives, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned to act better than I ever thought possible. I was an actress in my own home. Slowly, the excuses began. Last-minute meetings, sudden deadlines, requests to stay late. He said these things without looking me in the eye, as if the weight of guilt was already pressing on him. Though not enough to stop him, he spoke fast, in short, clipped sentences, a hurry I hadn't noticed before. Every excuse only confirmed what I suspected, but I listened with feigned understanding. He assumed I saw nothing, and that made him careless. The days that followed became a chain of longer absences, delayed replies, and missed calls with no explanation. He came home late, smelling of perfumes that weren't mine, and avoided touch as though my closeness annoyed him. He started leaving his phone face down and silent, a clumsy caution that only proved the deception. I watched him from a distance, mentally logging every sign. Patience had become my strongest weapon. One afternoon, with my heart pounding in my throat, I gathered my courage and decided to follow him quietly, keeping a safe distance between our cars. It didn't take long before the truth revealed itself. I watched as he parked in front of a discreet mid-range hotel, the Sterling Suites, and stepped out confidently, accompanied by a blonde woman. She laughed, touching him as if he belonged to her, and he didn't even try to hide it, as though his betrayal didn't deserve secrecy. I stayed inside my car, watching with silent tears. There was no room left for denial, and when she turned her head, my world broke apart. She wasn't a stranger. She was Tiffany Shaw, his colleague, the same woman who had been in our home several times. We'd shared dinners, office parties, even personal conversations about life and love. I felt stabbed twice. Once by him, once by her. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal turned into a cruel performance. Worse yet, both of them had acted it out in front of me. They weren't only deceiving me, but also her husband, Elias Hawthorne, a kind man who always greeted me politely when we crossed paths. Everything was a tangled web of lies. A double life built over our trust without the slightest shame. I realized they shared more than attraction. They shared secrets, stolen hours, and plans made in deceit. My suspicions had turned into certainty. The pain now had names and faces. I didn't leave the car. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. My time hadn't come yet. I simply watched, recording every gesture, every glance, knowing that soon, everything would collapse on its own. The trap was already in place, and there was no way to stop it. I became a spectator of my own revenge, letting silence do what words could not. The next morning, he took extra care getting ready. He chose a new shirt, sprayed a cologne I'd never smelled before, and studied his reflection in the mirror like a man preparing for a date. He left with a smile that no longer belonged to me. I watched him go, calm and detached, knowing exactly where he was headed, with whom, and what awaited him. I said nothing. I just waited. That evening, while eating dinner alone, my phone rang from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. On the other end was a panicked female voice, crying, words breaking between sobs. She asked if I was Darius's wife. My pulse quickened. I already knew this wouldn't be good. Something terrible has happened, she gasped. It was Tiffany, hysterical, begging for help. Her voice trembled as she explained that Darius was in the hotel bathroom in unbearable pain. She said that after using one of the condoms, he began screaming, writhing, and begging for help without understanding what was happening. She wanted my advice, as if I could calm her disaster. I just listened, coldly letting her panic return a small measure of my dignity. There was justice in his pain. She said he was shouting that something was burning him from the inside, that his skin was on fire. They tried rinsing in the shower, but it only worsened. He blamed her, yelling while struggling to dress. I imagined the scene with eerie calm, not madness, but a clear sense of justice in the form of searing pain. They rushed out of the hotel half-dressed, wrapped in shame and panic, while the clerk stared in confusion. They ended up in the emergency room, where he arrived screaming, and she couldn't explain anything. They made up a story about an allergic reaction, but no one believed it. Doctors examined him immediately, while others in the waiting area stared in disbelief. The humiliation became public. The medical team confirmed severe chemical irritation from an external substance, clearly intentional. They asked if any products had been used before intimacy, but he couldn't answer. Tiffany stayed silent, pale, afraid to voice her suspicion. The doctor made it clear. This was deliberate. Within 2 days, the story spread through the office like wildfire. Twisted, exaggerated, whispered behind closed doors. No one knew every detail, but everyone knew enough. The hotel, the ER visit, the pain, the exposed affair. Some retold it with mockery, others with curiosity, others with fake sympathy. The scandal was unstoppable. What was once secret became public humiliation. At work, people laughed quietly when he passed. Conversations died when he entered a room. Tiffany stopped showing up altogether. The workplace turned toxic with gossip until even upper management got involved. Both were summoned to a private meeting where they were told their actions had damaged the company's image. There was no space for excuses. The decision was final. Within a week, both were dismissed. Their affair had become a professional and personal catastrophe. From being seen as a model executive and family man, Darius became a walking embarrassment. People whispered about him at coffee shops, the gym, even at our children's school. He couldn't go anywhere without feeling the weight of people's stares. His confidence shattered. He was no longer the man in the perfect suit, just a shadow of what he'd been. One night, when he finally met my gaze, he tried to deny everything, as if he still had a way out. I asked one simple question, whether he had used a condom from the SUV. His silence told me everything. I told him I already knew, that I'd seen them together, that I'd heard the call. His face drained of color, then flushed red with anger, but he said nothing. Finally, he broke down crying, mumbling that it had been going on for months, that he hadn't meant to hurt me, that he'd lost control. His words were empty, cowardly, no trace of dignity left. He spoke of confusion, of mistakes, of emotions he didn't understand. But I wasn't listening anymore. I only saw a man undone by his own choices. His confession didn't bring peace. It only confirmed that we were over. Later, I discovered he had used part of our savings to buy her gifts, pay for getaways, and even book spa weekends. He had used our family's money to maintain a lie while I was struggling to manage bills and keep the household running. Seeing the bank statements felt like another hit to the gut. One that brought no tears this time, only deep anger. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate, conscious betrayal that could never be forgiven. Our marriage had already decayed from within. I locked myself in the bathroom, hands trembling as I looked at my reflection. A mix of fury and sorrow I had never felt before. I screamed silently, clenching my teeth until my jaw hurt, knowing I couldn't let him see how much he had broken me. I didn't throw anything or make noise. That anger deserved something more controlled. If he had played dirty, I wouldn't stoop to his level. I didn't want to fix anything anymore. I only wanted freedom. After several days of thought, I searched for her husband, Elias Hawthorne, on LinkedIn. He also had a right to the truth. I wrote him a short, calm message, offering to talk if he wished. He replied quickly, clearly shocked, and asked for details in a composed but shaken tone. We agreed to meet on a quiet bench at Centennial Olympic Park, away from noise and witnesses. We were two strangers bound by the same pain. When I told him everything, he didn't interrupt. He just bowed his head and stayed silent for a long time, as if each word hurt to process. He thanked me for my honesty, though his voice sounded empty, like something inside him had broken. He didn't cry, but his eyes revealed the defeat he couldn't hide. We sat quietly for a while, sharing the same pain without needing more words. He was grateful I hadn't stayed silent. That same night, I returned home and calmly began preparing the divorce papers. I gathered every piece of evidence, photos, messages, and bank statements. There was nothing to reconsider. Our marriage had ended long before I realized it. I left the documents on the dining table while he pretended to sleep on the sofa. The next morning, I went to the courthouse without looking back. When he received the notice, he came after me crying, begging for another chance, promising to change and never repeat his mistakes. He hugged me from behind, as if that could erase months of lies. I told him to let go, not in anger, but with calm certainty, and said I didn't believe him anymore. There was no hatred left, only an icy stillness that made him uneasy. I was no longer broken. I was free. Soon after, I learned that Tiffany's husband, Elias, had also filed for divorce, giving her no chance to justify herself. She tried to call it an emotional mistake, but he didn't listen. She lost not only her marriage, but also the respect of her children, friends, and colleagues. Her downfall was swift and deserved. Now, both of them were alone, facing the consequences of their own choices. What began as a secret affair ended in the complete ruin of two homes, leaving behind confused children, empty plans, and broken promises. Our house turned into a quiet battlefield, filled with hollow memories. Family dinners, shared laughter. All of it felt like scenes from a film that no longer made sense. The echoes of our past still lingered, but I no longer belonged there. The divorce process moved quickly with the evidence I provided and his lack of resistance. He didn't contest the property division or child custody. He knew he couldn't. He signed everything with shaking hands, avoiding my gaze. I attended each meeting with my head high, determined not to let pain make me falter. It was the closing chapter of a story I hadn't chosen. The hardest part was explaining it to the children, finding words that wouldn't destroy their image of their father or plant hatred in their hearts. They cried and asked questions, trying to find someone to blame. I told them the truth without unnecessary detail, only enough for them to understand it wasn't their fault. Seeing their sadness hurt more than any betrayal. That's when I realized I had to stay strong for them. Meanwhile, rumors spread through the neighborhood. Half-truths and exaggerations shared with that cruel curiosity of people who have nothing better to do. The stares at the grocery store, the sudden silence when I entered, all of it spoke louder than words. I knew some were enjoying the gossip while others pretended to care. Still, I kept my head high. The shame no longer belonged to me. It was theirs. I moved into a small apartment, modest, quiet, and without luxury, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I slept alone in a cold bed, listening to the sounds of the building as if they were part of a new life I was finally ready to begin. Sometimes the silence hurt more than the arguments we never had, but at least there were no more lies. Every corner of my new home belonged only to me. No hidden shadows, no foreign perfumes. I was starting over, even if I didn't know where to begin. As the days passed, I realized the guilt I had carried for so long wasn't mine. I hadn't broken anything. I was simply gathering the pieces he had shattered. I learned to stop justifying his betrayal and to stop searching for answers that didn't exist. I forgave myself for trusting, for loving without hesitation. I wasn't weak. I had only been sincere in a world full of masks. The first months passed slowly, each day heavier than the last. But little by little, the wounds began to heal. Not quickly, but steadily, like skin mending after a burn. I learned to live on my own, to enjoy my solitude, to no longer need approval from others. I began reading again, cooking for myself, and breathing without anxiety. Time, once my enemy, became my ally. One afternoon, I received a message from Tiffany's ex-husband, Elias, simply asking how I was doing. No hidden agenda, just genuine concern. We started talking occasionally, calmly, without drama. We weren't seeking pity, only understanding. It was surprising how easy it was to speak with someone who carried the same kind of wound. Sometimes you don't need explanations, just someone who understands. Our conversations became more frequent, lighter, more natural. It felt like we had found shelter in the middle of a storm. We talked about our children, our work, good days and bad days, without pretending to be strong. We supported each other quietly, without pressure or expectations. We weren't exactly friends, but something more. Two hurt souls walking in the same direction. In that fragile balance, something new began to grow. Life continued as it always does, and each of us rebuilt our path. I moved forward in my career, becoming more confident, more independent, less naive. He also rebuilt his routine, focusing on his children and his emotional well-being, leaving the past behind. For a time, we stopped talking. Not because of anger, but because life naturally pulled us apart. Still, something in me knew it wasn't a final goodbye. Years later, we ran into each other at a school event, surrounded by noise, parents, and old memories. First came a glance, then a hesitant smile, and finally a long conversation on a bench. Time hadn't erased our story, but it had softened it. We were no longer the same people, and that made everything easier. There was quiet respect in his eyes, and that was enough. When our eyes met again, it wasn't with sadness or expectation, just peace. The past stood behind us, silent but no longer in control. We didn't say anything extraordinary, but we both knew something had changed. It wasn't about attraction or nostalgia, it was something deeper. The recognition between two people who had survived and grown. We talked for hours, unhurried, as if everything unsaid before finally found its place. There were no accusations, only calm laughter and pauses that felt comfortable. We shared what we had learned and what we had let go of. He spoke about his fears, and I shared my scars. For the first time in years, I felt truly understood. As the weeks went by, we began seeing each other more often, first for coffee, then for walks in the park. There were no promises or plans, just an easy sense of comfort. Trust grew naturally, built on honesty, respect, and quiet understanding. We didn't need labels. We simply knew being together felt right. Without noticing, we started finding excuses to meet, as if fate was gently guiding us closer. There were no big declarations, only small gestures. A coffee that lasted longer than usual, a walk that ended too late, a smile that lingered a little more. It was simple, but filled with tenderness. It was the quiet beginning of something neither of us expected. With time, our conversations deepened. We laughed freely, remembered the past without pain, and let silence rest easily between us. There was a connection we hadn't searched for, but had naturally found. I felt safe being myself, without fear of betrayal, and he too seemed to breathe easier by my side. One afternoon, while walking downtown, he stopped in front of a bookstore and gently took my hand. He didn't say a word. The gesture alone carried so much meaning that I felt my throat tighten. I didn't let go. It was simple and real, more honest than any promise. We didn't need to talk about love. We were quietly building it. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to move forward. That night, the old fear returned like a faint echo, reminding me of everything I had lost before. I hesitated, wondering if I could risk my heart again, but something stronger than the fear told me this time was different. Not because he was perfect, but because I had changed. I decided to trust myself. We began a relationship without labels or grand plans. Only the certainty that we both deserved something healthy and genuine. We didn't erase the past, but we didn't let it control the present. Each meeting felt like a small celebration of what we had survived and what we were building from mutual respect. It wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about beginning again, with awareness. Our love wasn't perfect, but it was calm, honest, and steady. There were no lies, no games, no fear of asking or speaking. We both knew what it meant to lose everything, and that made us value every word, every moment. We had found something neither of us was looking for. A love that healed instead of hurt. One day, without planning it, we decided never to speak again about those who betrayed us. Not because of fear, but because they no longer had power over us. The pain had turned into wisdom, and the people from our past became nothing more than names in an old story. We began to focus on the good, what we learned, what we overcame, and what was reborn. The resentment faded, and with it, the weight we once carried. I never sought revenge, but life found its own way to deliver it. They were left alone, without trust, without a home, caught in the lies they created. And we, without planning it, ended up together, rebuilt, stronger, and dignified. What began as betrayal ended up joining two lives that might never have crossed otherwise. It felt as if the universe, after breaking us, decided to reward our endurance, not for what we lost, but for what we survived. Now I understand the pain wasn't an ending, but the beginning of a stronger version of myself. I learned that even from deep betrayal, true love can rise. A love that doesn't ask for permission, but gives everything sincerely. I have no regrets because every tear led me here. And if I had to go through it all again to reach this moment, I would without hesitation, because in the end, I survived and I loved again. We started making simple plans without fear, as if rediscovering life from a small but bright corner. A weekend trip, an unexpected dinner, a walk with the children at sunset. Each moment felt clean and light, free from unspoken pain. We didn't need grand gestures, only truth. I realized happiness often feels more like peace than excitement. I caught myself smiling naturally, without guilt from the past or worry for the future. I was no longer waiting for someone to save me or fill an empty space. I had learned to be whole, and that changed everything. Love that comes after pain feels different, steadier, wiser, and more aware. I didn't idealize what we had, but I valued it deeply, like something rare and real. The children began to heal too. It wasn't instant, but time, consistency, and love did their part. They saw strength in me, and slowly the painful questions stopped. Elias gave them space, present but never intrusive. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer hurt. It became just another page in our story. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I saw him playing with his daughter, laughing freely. In that moment, I knew I had chosen right. Not for what he gave me, but for what he brought out in me. Calm, trust, and truth. I was no longer afraid to be vulnerable, and for someone once betrayed, that was the biggest victory. Months passed, and life flowed naturally, sometimes so quietly that peace itself felt unfamiliar. I learned to stop expecting disappointment, to stop preparing excuses, and to simply live. I didn't want perfection, only presence. And finally, I had it, freely, without asking. One night, in the middle of a simple conversation, he said he admired me for surviving everything without bitterness. I was silent for a moment, realizing I'd never seen it that way. But maybe he was right. I hadn't let pain define me. I chose not to hate, not to drag old wounds, not to seek revenge beyond what was fair. I chose to love again. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't make forever promises or write our future in stone. We only know that today we stand whole, scars and all. And that's enough. Sometimes life doesn't offer second chances, but it gives unexpected beginnings. And this ours is one of them. So yes, I survived. I was broken. I lied to myself. I rose in anger and rebuilt with kindness. In the end, without searching, without planning, I loved again. But this time from truth, peace, and most importantly, from within myself. Did you enjoy my story? From which city are you listening? Share it in the comments. I'd love to know. If you liked this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep creating more. Thank you for your love and support. I can't wait to read your thoughts. On your screen, you'll find 2 more real-life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.